really be paying attention to like what God's doing and how He wants to use us. 15 years ago, I had this job at this company, and it was the guy who owned it was a Christian, and he was kind of cool, but there was a lot of people in the company that were really antagonistic to like faith. And when I went in there, I just decided I'd been a missionary already, and I decided I was just going to be a missionary at my job, So I was at this company, and there was a guy that was kind of like almost like my partner in the job. And so one day I was there, and he told me that he knew that there was probably a God because he knew there was a devil because of all the stuff that was going on. I was like, wow, that's why I became a Christian, because it's the same thing, And so I ended up talking to him for a little while, and then we went back in the warehouse, and it was a big warehouse full of computer stuff. And so he got on his knees at a computer box and asked the Lord into his heart. And it really hit me this week because we were going down to the Esther house, and when I was down at the Esther house, this woman came who used to live in that house a while ago. And it's been really interesting how God's been taking like the past few years of prayer and praying for people and really having a whole bunch of things just land at that spot at the Esther house. So I was there, and this lady came in, I think the day before, and she said that she lived there and she had a whole bunch of stuff in the garage. She wanted to take it out, and so that they told Jen and a couple other people, and I showed up the next day, and she was there. And I started talking to her, and she started telling me how, just about all the stuff in her life, like her kids and everything. And all of a sudden she started telling me about her son that was 12 years old that had died 15 years before that. And all of a sudden when she started telling me about her son, all of a sudden I knew who he was. And I had actually spoken at his funeral. And what happened was, the rest of the story with this guy, so she and this guy that I led to the Lord had been boyfriend and girlfriend, and they had a son, and then their life was all messed up, and she was really messed up, so he ended up raising the son by himself, from almost like an infant, until I met him. And then when I met him, he was living with another lady who had a daughter that had spina bifida, and then also she was pregnant with my friend Todd's son. And so Todd got so hit by what happened that he just decided from the prayer time and giving his life to the Lord, that he decided to get married and just totally straighten out his life. So I ended up leading, his son's name was John. I ended up leading John one day, praying with Todd and with John, come to the Lord, and then praying with his wife, praying with his girlfriend before he became wife and everything. And then I left that company and started this other company that I had where I met Jen. And I was a few months into it, and all of a sudden I heard that Todd and his wife and all their 3 kids were murdered. And just totally was a really crazy thing. It was in live waves, and it was just this crazy, crazy situation. And I don't even want to go into it because it was so harsh. But so I went to the funeral, and when I was at the funeral, everybody was just like freaked out. It was totally, people were just unchurched, didn't have any sense of context. So there was this deep, deep, deep grief, that people were, and realistically so. I mean, it was really rough. And I was there, and it was really funny because I felt awkward because I wasn't a part of the family. I was just like some guy that was coming in, but there was so much grief. I just felt like finally I went up to Todd's parents, and I said, I just need to let you know that, I started sharing the story about how Todd gave his life to the Lord, and they asked me to get up and share at the funeral and, come back. So this lady she was at that funeral. She was right there, and she was so caught up in drugs and everything that really snapped her out of it. And I realized that it's so significant that God takes our steps of simple obedience and weaves them into this amazing story where 15 years later, I prayed for her at the Esther house. And it's not really, the thing, it's kind of tough sometimes. I was even Minty and I were talking yesterday. It was yesterday, right? Or 2 days ago or whatever it was. And I realized that sometimes, Minty was going through something this weekend with one of her friends committed suicide, right? And I realized that, when we're doing what God has for us, we can bring life into every single situation. It doesn't matter how, I can't understand why things happen. We can't understand why things happen, but what we can do is we can be available for God to use us in every single situation. If we take that step and say, God, I'm going to be the one that you choose. And I remember, when I led Todd to the Lord, there was this other guy who was manager. He was cussing at us and just being crazy. It was it was so, part of it's you want to pull back and not do what God has, but we just don't know the consequences of not going for it and not being fully obedient to what God has. And so it reminded me, it was so significant, this meeting down here, and then what is this new house going to be? It's going to be the house where Minty and Forrest and Lon and Nang and Seth, that these two families, that God it's actually going to be like a palace for princesses and princes. And God's doing transactions. I mean, God is doing significant transactions. And I realize, you listen to a story like that and you're like, whoa, but this is just what God's doing. And we get to be in the middle. I was standing there talking to her. She was just sobbing. She was bawling. And I realized that Todd and her son are up there fully aware of what's going on and probably been waiting for a moment for their mom to get touched, for her to get touched. So I just want to go back into prayer and recognize, I'm telling you, that there is so much momentum in what God is doing right now. And we have this opportunity to be a team, be a family, to love, people that God brings to us. I love you. You know how glad I am to have you around? I saw your sister at McDonald's there, your cousin later on. You know how glad I was to see her? She was smiling. She was so proud that we came in to get some food for her. And I'm grateful for all of you. All you guys, I can't tell you how grateful I am for what God's doing.